The new era of the NBA is here. Find out which under 26 superstars in the best position to get their first championship as we preview the conference finals. Next, Dr. Beloved is back in the building to heal all the semifinal losers. And lastly, when it comes to how we watch sports, in the words of Sam Cooke, a change gon' come. See how that applies to the NBA and the NFL. But first, I love these conference finals matchups because it's two styles make fights type matchups. First, we got the Celtics and the Pacers, and it's a full-blown high-speed chase on both sides. A lot of points, a lot of scoring, a lot of action. And then we got the Mavs versus Timberwolves in the slow, methodical rock fight type action. First, let's kick it off with the Celtics and the Pacers, and game one literally just ended. I was going to try to be impartial and unbiased. I can't. If you listened to this before, you know I'm a Celtics fan. The game just ended, and we won in overtime. How am I supposed to sit here and be calm? I just watched my team win in overtime. My blood pressure is sky high. My heart is in my ass cheeks right now. I'm supposed to sit here and try to give y'all calm, unbiased analysis. I can't lie to y'all like that. Let's be honest. 36 points from Jason Tatum. Couple boneheaded plays, but we'll excuse it. We won the game. Who cares? Jaylen Brown with the clutchest corner three of his career thus far that I still don't know how he made. I'm sitting there in this very spot yelling, no, 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 yes, as it goes in. But you got to tip your hat to the Pacers, man. That team will not die. They just, every time the Celtics went on a run, other matchups when I'm used to seeing those runs lead to, all right, we're going to go about 20, 30, end of the quarter. This is going to be over. We're going to put the scrubs in and I can start getting ready to record this podcast. No, that's not how it worked out. We build. The Celtics stop moving the ball again. And then the Pacers start shooting the lights out like they've been doing. In a weird way, it kind of felt like watching a bizarro version of the Celtics, especially when the Celtics play defense that poorly. No offense, Pacers. Y'all know y'all aren't the 2004 Pistons when it comes to defense, right? I don't have to, There's about 10 to 15 minute stretches of real time where I'm watching this Pacers team like, oh my God, they can't miss. And they're running like a mile a second. How does anybody stop this team? What is going on here? Followed by 3 straight of the most boneheaded basketball plays I've ever seen in my life, like Tyrese Halliburton blowing out a tire in overtime and turning over the ball over somehow. I still don't know how he did it, but I'll take it. And as I'm watching, I feel like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm like, hey, I recognize that. I've seen that before. Unfortunately, since the game just ended, a lot of my advanced analytics I like to go to make myself sound smarter and to make y'all smarter at the end of these games are not yet available. So we got to go with the regular old counter stats. From 3, the Celtics were 33%, 15 for 45. And what made me hopeful about today's game is that the Celtics didn't shoot the lights off from 3. We're still able to put up 133 points and win the game. Again, the Pacers are not the greatest defensive team in the world, but still signs of life, still signs of hope. Happy to see it. The plus side for the Pacers, though, you had 7 players get into double digits, 3 scoring 20 in Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and Tyrese Halliburton. This might be the best Miles Turner game I've ever seen in my life. The Celtics just had no answer for him at all. Maybe Kristaps, if he decides he wants to play again, will end up being the answer, because clearly the answer was not on the floor. But then you go over to the Celtics side of the ball. This is going to be a very Celtics-centric part of the podcast. Don't worry. We're going to get to all the notes I did to actually preview this series in about 2 minutes. But just first, break down this game. 36 for Tatum, 28 for Jrue Holiday, 26 for Jaylen Brown. Just lovely all over the place. Only 8 for Peyton Pritchard compared to the 13 for TJ McConnell. I'll be honest, I thought they both had a lot more because the amount of white-on-white crime that was going on during this game when both of them were going at each other reminded me of that Larry Bird clip where he looked at Charles Barkley and was like, I take it as disrespect when y'all put a white boy on me. It's disrespectful to my skills. Both of them felt that way whenever they saw each other. Dear God. All right, to summarize today's game, great game about it. Great game for both sides. The Pacers showed me a lot. I expect the Celtics to shoot better from 3 throughout the series and play better defense. Where the Pacers' offense shines because of the pace they play with, no pun intended, is it requires a level of focus, discipline, and detail that the Celtics have not shown they are able to keep for 2 games in a row. They were barely able to keep it for 2 possessions in a row in this game, which is how those runs kept starting. So if there's an argument for this series being prolonged and ended up being a 7-game series instead of a 4 or 5-game series, that would be it. The argument for it to end up being a 4 or 5-game series would be that may have been the Pacers' best shot and they lost in overtime because they kind of self-destructed. This is a younger team and it's their first time in the conference finals. So we'll see on Thursday how that ends up turning out. All right, so now for all the notes that I had before the game started. Everything the Pacers want to do, the Celtics can do better. I still stand on that. The Pacers want to play fast on offense. Although they have a higher pace on offense, what bogs that down and makes it different is the Celtics play better when they're playing faster. When the Celtics slow down and turn it into the iso ball hours where the Celtics start to get in trouble, as you guys saw today. Pretty much everything in the half court that isn't Kristaps Porzingis posting somebody up usually ends up in a poor shot for the Celtics. And I thought this was going to be the game plan for the Celtics coming in, and I'm happy to see it bear fruit. Joe Mazzulla's game plan offensively clearly is we're attacking Tyrese Halliburton and Aaron Nembhard all series long. So they better channel their inner Ron Artest if they want to win this series. The Pacers' advantages are they have a coaching advantage very clearly with Rick Carlisle over Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla being the youngest coach in the league, Rick Carlisle obviously having a championship with the Mavericks in 2011, winning that championship over LeBron. Been in the league forever, is a former Celtic himself on those 80 Celtics. So he's been around the block a couple times and then some. Because every adjustment Joe Mazzulla made, whether it was switching to a zone somewhere in the second or third quarter, it just seemed like Rick Carlisle had a counterpunch every couple minutes. And if not for a lot of really costly Pacers turnovers, I don't know how that would have turned out for the Celtics because Rick Carlisle seemed to have an answer for everything. I brought up Porzingis earlier. They said Porzingis is going to miss the first 2 games of the series. I've been watching basketball for a while now. Usually first 2 games turns into game 4, game 5. In my opinion, if Porzingis ends up in the starting lineup before this series is over, that means the Celtics have gone horribly wrong somewhere. So with that, we will see how the rest of this series go. And now from our high-speed chase, we're going to go on over to the rock fight. We're going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I am looking forward to a series I can watch without my heart beating out of his chest every 3 seconds. One of the first things I saw when I was taking my notes for this matchup was I don't think the Dallas Mavericks have an answer for Karl Anthony Towns. Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington and Derek Lively looked pretty good against Chet Holmgren and insert nameless big that OKC had before. But if you remember early in that Clippers series, Zubac was kind of having his way with everybody. Karl Anthony Towns can do everything Zubac can in the paint and then some. Arguably outside of Jokic and Embiid, the best offensive big that we have in the league. The problem is the Timberwolves have a person who can stop Karl Anthony Towns, and that's Karl Anthony Towns, because he is prone to do some boneheaded things from time to time. So if the answer is going to be Karl Anthony Towns, we need you to give us 25 and 12 for an entire series, that gets rough. Although I will give him credit for the 23 points and I believe it was 12 rebounds for Game 7 against the Nuggets in an incredible win by the Timberwolves that nobody, including myself, saw coming. So hats off to them. Speaking of that Game 7, one of the things I thought was really interesting that I'm sure Jason Kidd and the Mavericks coaching staff picked up on was the Nuggets game plan really against Anthony Edwards was, bro, we're doubling you every time you come down the court and we're making you give this ball up. Whether you want to or not, you're giving up the ball. And he did every time. And Anthony Edwards has yet to activate the Curtis Blow give and go gene, the Reggie Miller, the Steph Curry, the, hey, if I pass off the double team, I should probably cut. I should probably curl. I should do anything other than take myself out the play. Granted, he's 22, so at some point he'll learn it. But if Dallas opens up the game plan that way, I would hope Chris Finch or whoever on the coaching staff will pull Ant aside and be like, yo, I hope you know at some point if you give the ball up and go after that double team, you might have an open lane to the basket because they're no longer going to be looking at you. Because who on the Dallas Mavericks will be able to take Ant one-on-one defensively? Derrick Jones Jr., Luka Dončić, Kyrie Irving? But the funny part is the Mavericks aren't even a bad defensive team per se. They were highest in defensive rating in the league for the last 20 games. The counterpoint is the Minnesota Timberwolves were the #1 defensive rating all season long. And as we saw during that Nuggets series, when the Minnesota defense is clicking and firing on all cylinders, it's like something we just don't see in today's NBA. Everything short of the ref blowing the whistle, they'll do. They are a physical team and a pack of African wild dogs. For y'all that don't watch National Geographic, the African wild dog is the most per number effective pack of hunters in the wild. They're like the San Antonio Spurs of hunting. Just teamwork, hunt the animal down. They got formations. They got plays. Do yourself a favor. Watch something of the African wild dogs. Put it into Google. You'll know what I'm talking about. So both of these defense are good, bordering on great, but the Timberwolves are imposing on defense. And there's no joker on the Mavericks for Rudy Gobert to have to focus on and really have to play that defense in the post against. So Rudy Gobert can do what he does best, roam in the paint and mind everybody else's business, and that's where he gets dangerous. And if that's what the Mavericks have to deal with for an entire series, it might just be Goodnight Irene in the paint. Everything outside of Kyrie Irving just making circus layups all series long. Counterpoint if you're the Mavericks. I would like to run y'all back in the clock 2 years ago. The last series Rudy Gobert played as a member of the Utah Jazz. Do we remember who it was against? The Dallas Mavericks, where Jalen Brunson and Luka Dončić got Rudy Gobert up on switches and made him dance all series long. Every time on the perimeter, it was either he stayed in drop coverage and they were bombing threes and mid-range jumpers all game long, or he came out and tried to blitz him and he got left in the dust. Assist to big man straight to the rack for Brunson or Luka Dončić. I would hope Rudy has learned something in the 2 years since that series that ultimately got him traded. My last key to the series for the Mavericks is Luka Dončić going to have 2 healthy knees? Because he hasn't looked like Luka really this entire playoff run. I can't pinpoint the exact game versus the Clippers where his knee looked hampered. I want to say it was game 1, but he's looked about 75 to 80% Luka Dončić all playoffs long. And if you remember coming into this playoff season, he was second all time in points per game in the playoffs behind Michael Jordan. So he's not just a good playoff performer. He's a all-time historically great playoff performer. So if we get that version of Luka Dončić from the Mavericks, I don't know if the Timberwolves are going to have an answer for that. As much as I love that defense, only but so much you could do if you're going against an all-time great on the other side of the ball. But if Luka's hampered to that 75-80%, he's no longer the best player in the series. Anthony Edwards is. Unless, I know I keep going back and forth and hedging. I promise I'll come to a final decision. Unless Kyrie Irving finally decides, you know what, Luka, just go ahead and give me the car keys, my guy. Just put them in my pocket. I got it. You go over there. I know that's not what you do, Mr. Super High Usage Rate. You go over there. I got this. Let me go create as many buckets for us as we see fit. Especially if this game gets really bogged down like I think it will, and it's a lot of half-court offense versus half-court defense. Scoring against that Timberwolves half-court is super difficult, and they don't have the Jokic, like I said earlier, who'll be able to create plays off the dribble and hit slashers and cutters to create easy baskets. Their way of creating easy baskets is going to be, all right, Kyrie, go cook. Go show off your greatest dribble in NBA history, get to the rack, or pull up jumpers, or do what you do. Everyone else will just get out your way. That'll be the way of creating easy buckets. All in all, because I value experience and the backcourt of the Dallas Mavericks feature an all-time great playoff performer and the person who hit either the first or second best shot in NBA Finals history, depends on how you feel about Ray Allen's shot against the Spurs, I have to go with the Dallas Mavericks. I'm saying Mavericks in 7. For the Boston Celtics, I'm saying Celtics in 6. I had 5 before game 1, but Celtics in 6. So I think our NBA Finals is going to be the Boston Celtics versus the Dallas Mavericks. And then I predict that series when we get there. Can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to the NBA Finals. Coming up on the show, go ahead and lay back on the couch. Dr. Beloved is coming back in the building, and we're going to talk to these semifinal losers and see what they need for the offseason. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Kev BK Beloved Show. We're going to get started with Dr. Beloved and NBA Team Therapy, who is my first patient. The New York Knickerbockers. Come on in. Sorry to see your season end like that. I know the wound is still fresh. I'm not here to twist the knife. I am a benevolent king. I'm not here to hurt nobody. I'm here to just have an honest conversation between me and the Knicks fans. That's all. First off, we have to have an honest conversation about Tom Thibodeau because he is the answer and the problem to everything that is wrong with the Knicks. And Flows and Delaney on Twitter put out this tweet that can summarize it a lot better than I can. That somebody titled it the 10 Tibbs Commandments. And he's a Chicago Bears beat writer, so I'm just guessing here, Flows, that you're also a Bulls fan, which is why you're so intimately familiar with Tom Thibodeau and his get down. Step 1, Tibbs changed the culture. Players embrace hard work. Step 2, players perform beyond expectation. Step 3 is stars born or brought over. Step 4, expectations form. Step 5, a deep playoff run is expected. Step 6, freak injuries. Step 7, fans defend Tibbs hard. Step 8, players aren't the same next year. Step 9, fans turn on Tibbs. Step 10, he's fired. Right now, we are at step 6, freak injuries. Because Jalen Brunson breaking his hand at halftime of Game 7, that's not a fatigue thing. That's a freak injury thing. Like, there's no amount of running and extra minutes you can put in that breaks your hand. Those type of things just happen. Although it is ironic that the guy who was putting up like 25 to 30 shots a game for your team ends up hurting his shooting hand. There is some irony in that, but that is not the reason why it happened. But I am going to list some of these injuries that the Knicks have had going into this season. This might be hard to hear, Knicks fans. And again, I'm sorry. Again, I'm not here to twist the knife. I promise I'm not. Boban Bogdanović injured. Julius Randle injured. Mitchell Robinson injured. Josh Hart, OG Anunoby tried to play 5 minutes, instantly looked like he couldn't play, came out injured. Guys, this is not a coincidence when it comes to Tom Thibodeau coach teams. He burns his teams out. He overworks his teams, and then they fall flat. The ceiling of a top Thibodeau team is the conference finals. We have 10 years of evidence of this now, unless he has somebody to balance him out like a Doc Rivers, who's able to be like, hey, Tibbs, chill out, my man. Just chill out. So I have 2 solutions for Tom Thibodeau going into the next season, one of which is much more realistic than the other. Solution 1, the Knicks go out and add a bunch more depth so he doesn't have to burn his starters out as much. And solution 2, you got to hire Tibbs a nerd. Just bring in a nerd who specializes in rest and fatigue so he can look at Tibbs and say, hey, you could play Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart 45 minutes tonight on a random Thursday in February. But according to my calculations, lifts up glasses, that might cause them to miss a Game 6 in April. Is that the game you're willing to play? Because the ceiling of your team is attached to your 5'10" point guard. Side note, Knicks fans, a lot of you owe Becky Hammond an apology. I know that's not how the internet works, but goddamn it, she deserves an apology because she was right. Your team is limited if your best player is under 6 feet tall. It just is. So the more realistic option is bring in a nerd, man. Hire a nerd. Columbia University is there. NYU. Go to one of them nerd schools. Grab one of them and just put him next to Tibbs. Him or her, they, whatever they identify as, put him next to Tibbs in a suit with a real big calculator and a MacBook and just sit him down and be like, hey, Tibbs, buddy, sit him down, please. Because I don't think Tibbs should be fired. I don't think it should get that far, especially not now. The Knicks were cultureless. In that span in between Carmelo Anthony and that first Julius Randle season where he made All-NBA, was that about a 4 or 5 year span where the Knicks thought they were getting every single free agent and didn't get a single one? The Knicks didn't have a single bit of culture. Tibbs came in and fixed that in a way that Phil fucking Jackson couldn't. So yeah, pardon me if I'm not willing to throw Tibbs out the window yet, but clearly there are some changes that need to be made. All right, outside of Tibbs, there are some pieces you're going to have to look to add in the offseason. But first, we got to take a look. We got to take a look at what the cap situation is looking like for you. Middle of the league in total tax, only spent just under $150 million. You have $21 million in cap space, so you can bring in a mid-tier, mid-level star. I like it. And more than likely, Julius Randle is going to be the centerpiece of whatever trade happens for the Knicks. He's making, goes to Google, Julius Randle has a $30 million cap hit, so add that to whatever ends up being traded. The two most popular trade targets you hear for the Knicks are Mikal Bridges and Donovan Mitchell, one of which I like significantly more than the other. Donovan Mitchell makes no sense at all because you can't have a backcourt of two guards that are under 6'2". You just can't. There's too much of a defensive liability, especially in a conference where Celtics fan bias out of it. When Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the number one team in the conference and you got to play them 4 times a year and more than likely you're going to have to go through them to get to the finals. Yeah, no, bad idea. Plus, when you look at how much Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson need the ball in their hands to be successful, not great. After playing with Luka Dončić for the first couple years of his career, I don't think Jalen Brunson is going to be that keen to bring in Donovan Mitchell in. The Bridges part, I'm 80% there with y'all. Obviously, the Villanova connection, the fit is great. He values defense, so him and Tibbs will go together beautifully. But is Mikal Bridges, you just say, insert Mikal Bridges on this team. Julius Randle was hurt. More than likely, he'll be the centerpiece of this trade. Insert Mikal Bridges on this Knicks team we just saw. Is he the difference in beating the Celtics in this conference finals and possibly winning the NBA finals as well? Or is it losing 6 in the conference finals, get swept in the finals? Is that the going all in move you want to make? If you're telling me we're getting first half of the season, just got traded to the next Mikal Bridges where he was going crazy for 28 a game, I'm with you. Bring him in. But if you're telling me we're getting the Mikal Bridges we got this past season, you might want to look to add another piece on top of that and hope for the best. Thank you for coming in. Next patient, Oklahoma City Thunder. Step 1, lock Chet Holmgren in the weight room and don't let him leave until October. He's just too light, man. He's too light. I'm sorry. I hate to be weightist, sizist, whatever it's called. Chet Holmgren he's too small. He just is. It's nice to have the athletic centers who could play on the perimeter and all that there. That's awesome. But I'm going to need you to not get bodied in the paint and allow offensive rebounds all the time by the other team. Derek Lively's good. He ain't that damn good to keep getting all his offensive boards against you. Or you can do what you should have done at the trade deadline and get some backup centers. That would be nice. Take a look at this tax bill here. You have $68 million in tax space left. Ain't no excuse for you to leave this offseason without at least another center. And also, I'm going to keep saying this, for every young team that overachieves, do not rely on your team just getting better and don't make any moves in the offseason. Don't do it. It always fails. It never works. You have to make a move in the offseason. Always. If you don't get better, you're getting worse. If anyone should know that, it should be Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder, because it just happened to them a decade ago when they made the finals and lost to Miami. You have the coach in Mark Dagnall. You have the superstar in the SGA. Your number 2 was real inconsistent with Jalen Williams, but we can chalk that one up to young nigga syndrome.
Young nigga syndrome. Noun. Definition. A condition where a young team or player performs below their usual standard in high-pressure situations due to lack of experience.
So all is not lost if you're OKC. You could look at the Kings. The Kings missed the playoffs altogether because they were like y'all, except they weren't the 1 seed. They were the 3 seed. But still, they were like y'all. Took a step a season before everyone thought they would. Now look at them. Didn't make any changes, and now their window is closed. These championship windows are never as open as you think they are. Make your move now or risk missing it. Next patient. The Cleveland Cavaliers, this one is real simple. Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen, I'd bet a large amount of money they will not be on this roster come October. Who are you bringing in? If you're building a team around Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, that's fantastic. Who else you got? As I was planning out this segment and it looked like the Timberwolves were going to lose, I had Karl Anthony Towns just kind of scribbled down in pen, because then at least you don't have 2 big men that can't score. At least you have one that can score, and Karl Anthony Towns is going to be playing a similar role that he's playing with Minnesota now, where Evan Mobley will be doing all the big man stuff in the paint, and Carl can go be a small forward because that's what he thinks he is. Timberwolves in the conference finals, I'm just going to assume that they're not going to trade Karl-Anthony Towns. I feel like that's a safe assumption. With only $13 million in cap space too, that's not a lot of wiggle room to go pick up a free agent either. And Dan Gilbert's been known to penny pinch from time to time, except if LeBron's putting the clamps on him to force his hand into making some offseason moves. So best of luck with that one. That's something the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to have to figure out. But building around Darius Garland, extending Evan Mobley, and getting as much as you can for Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen is going to be the next step. I do look forward to see what the Cavaliers do because I don't think they're nearly as far away from winning as people think they are. Next patient. The Denver Nuggets. Now, before I get to the Denver Nuggets, I have a message to NBA fans, specifically NBA social media fans. Guys, we don't have to discredit everything. We don't. One of the worst things about the Skip Bayless first takeification of sports discourse is everything has turned to a GOAT debate. We feel the need to qualify everything. We feel the need to discredit every accomplishment for a player. Like, oh, see, last year's ring for the Nuggets was fake. They didn't beat a 50-win team, that whole blah, blah, blah. No, bro, they won a championship. And then they lost this year. Because that's how life works. I had a whole segment last week about how repeating at champions really hard. Only 12 teams all time have done it. The last 4 teams to have done it. The Super Warriors with Steph and KD, the Big 3 Miami Heat, Kobe Gasol Lakers, Kobe Shaq Lakers. All-time great players. Every team I just named featured one of the 10 best players of all time, if not 5. And it's clear Jokic just isn't that type of player yet. And that is fine. But that doesn't make him a fraud because y'all want clicks. Jokic is fine. Him and Jamal Murray had 35 and 34 points apiece. It's okay. Teams lose. The Timberwolves are really good. There's a chance they could play in the finals and might even win it. It's fine. The flip side of that is we can calm down sometimes. Another piece of the first takeification of sports discourse is sometimes we feel like we got to just take way too big of a leap. And it can't just be Jokic is good at basketball. It has to be Jokic is the greatest offensive player I've ever seen. Jokic is already in the 15 to 20 greatest players ever. Guys, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that because I feel like that's a main cause as to why people have to jump and call him a fraud on the other side because y'all have to jump out the window and make him seem like he's the second coming of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when you don't have to do that. You could simply say, wow, great player. Love to see him win a championship, 3 MVPs. Can't wait to see what he does because he's not even 30 yet. Okay. Now we can actually talk about the Nuggets in their offseason. So the Nuggets have negative $70 million in cap space. They have the 3rd highest tax bill in the league behind the Celtics and the Suns. But if you're the owner of the Nuggets, Stan Kroenke, how worried are you about a tax bill if you have the most exciting Nuggets team you've ever had and you're trying to keep this window as open as you can? Because if we're honest, the window first year being open was probably the bubble. But then Jamal Murray got hurt. Then he got hurt the next year. And then he got hurt the next year. And then you won. And then you lost this year. So realistically, championship windows at most are 5 years. So if we're having this conversation a year from now and you lose in the second round of playoffs, that's different. And now's not really the time to be cutting costs. And your team is built on chemistry and offensive flow. So how many roster changes can you really make? And if you're making those changes to that roster, what type of players can you realistically bring in that are going to be able to fit in the system where the center is making all the plays for the most part? Even though Jokic's usage rate isn't nearly as high as you would think it was for someone who seems like he has the ball all of the time for the Nuggets, but still. If you were looking to make a change, the obvious answer is Michael Porter Jr., who in that series against the Timberwolves was just under 11 points a game, 37% from the field, 32% from 3, 76% from the free throw line, 35 minutes a game. For 5 years, $180 million, we need better than that. Especially if you're going to give your team almost nothing on defense. Yeah, you're going to have to pick up your play a little bit. But with that size contract, unless a team is going to convince themselves, we're going to trade for Michael Porter Jr., and he is going to come in and score 10 to 15 more points a game because he's going to get more shots. Unless that's what they're going to convince themselves of, maybe. You never know. And NBA offseasons tend to get a little crazy. But the Nuggets will be the one team where I wouldn't even be mad if they go into next year and say, you know what, man, our bench was young. That's why we didn't have any depth. Let's let them get older. We still have one of the best, if not the best player in the league. Make sure Jamal Murray does yoga all summer long so he could actually play a full season. And let's just run it back. Why not? I have a grand point I want to make for team therapy before I move on to the last segment of the podcast. A big winner of the playoffs so far is trades. In season and just general trade swing. Of all 4 of the available playoff teams, all 4 of them have made a big in-season trade for an impact player that's currently on their team, or just a big swing trade in general. Pascal Siakam for the Pacers, Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington for the Mavericks, who pretty much won the series for them against the OKC Thunder, and the OKC Thunder could have easily traded for them too, but story for another day. The Boston Celtics with Derek White last year and this offseason trading for Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Timberwolves trading for Mike Conley and trading for Rudy Gobert in the offseason in what a trade we all thought was terrible, but turns out they know better than us. And then the Mavericks again traded for Kyrie Irving in another trade we all thought was terrible, but again, turns out they know better than us. So a message to all the NBA teams out there, all the GMs, take the swing. Take the swing. Swing for the fences. It's better than doing nothing. Because as you can see, every conference final team are here because they took a chance. And it seems to be working out pretty damn well. All right, coming up to close the show, how we watch sports is going to change in the immediate future. But I'm going to tell you why. Up next. All right, so if you've been following sporting news lately, the NBA is currently negotiating their broadcast rights, and the NFL just announced their most recent schedule. Both of them look like they're going to be making the shift into adding some streaming, and in the NBA's case, it looks like they're going to drop one of their longtime partners, TNT. They're pretty much acting like that deal's already done. For everyone that's so concerned over inside the NBA and Kevin Harlan, guys, somebody's going to hire them. They'll be fine. Kevin Harlan's not going to be unemployed. He'll be calling NBA games for somebody. Charles Barkley, Kenny, Ernie Johnson might just stay at Turner. Who knows? But they'll be fine. But I want to save some of the NBA talk until we get much closer to those deals actually being announced, because there's a lot of rumored things that we'll get to later. I'll save till the end. Just speculation stuff. The NBA, the NFL, we have a lot more definitive answers. So we'll talk about that. First off, the big thing is they announced they're going to start putting games on Netflix. They already had Prime Video last year. They're going to put more games on Peacock. And everyone's like, why would they do this? They have 20 total games streaming exclusive games this year, 20 of them, between Peacock, Prime Video, and Netflix, including YouTube TV has Sunday Ticket and Red Zone, and NFL Plus, which is the NFL's own streaming app. Why go to streaming? Well, the first thing is, this is according to Forbes.com, in the first half of 2023, 93 billion hours were spent on Netflix. I don't think you hear me. 93 billion hours were spent on Netflix. That equates to almost 11,000 years of television were watched on Netflix between all of its users. So the big thing I want us to look at is audience. Netflix is available in 190 countries. Prime Video, who the NFL is already affiliated with, is available in over 200 countries. Peacock is only available in the U.S. and U.S. territories, but I think they just threw that one in there as a favor to NBC, who's trying to grow their streaming service as is. Now let's look at their regular broadcasting partners. CBS, U.S. territories. NBC, U.S. and U.S. territories, but you can get it in Canada and Mexico if you're willing to pay for pay-per-view. Fox is the exception with 28 different countries, but some of those are just Fox News. Some of them are Fox Regular. That gets a little iffy as to which ones actually get the NFL and which ones don't. I spent way too long trying to research this and was not able to find a definitive answer. Go talk to the Murdoch family. They'll be able to answer better than me. So they're expanding their reach on an international scale. There's a reason the NFL keeps having these international games. There's a Friday game to start the season this year after the season opener. September 6th, the Green Bay Packers versus the Philadelphia Eagles in Sao Paulo, Brazil. They're playing in South America for the first time. They had games in Germany last year. They have games in London. They had a preseason game in Tokyo in the 90s at some point. They're trying to bring that back. They played games in Mexico. Like, the NFL is trying up on a global scale. And would you like to know why? Because they've hit their ceiling in the United States. According to Sportico, who is citing Nielsen ratings, 93 of the top 100 broadcast programs last year were NFL games. 93 of them. The NFL has America on lock. I know that some of you don't actually know what Nielsen ratings are. Let me explain. Nielsen ratings are defined as, this is straight from dictionary.com, an estimate of total number of viewers for a particular television program expressed as a percentage of the total number of viewers whose television sets are on at the same time based on a monitoring of the sets of a pre-selected sample of viewers. See how that's a little more vague? That'll come up later. In 2017, the company announced that it'll add some subscription video on demand audiences to its measures. So for people that watch streaming services that we mentioned before that the NFL's partner with, they will throw that in. And the ratings measure per household, not per person. That's all going to be important, because that brings me over to the last point and the most important point as to why the NFL and the NBA are going to move more towards streaming platforms. It's because of the data it provides. Now, this is just from Amazon, who the NFL has already partnered with. This is just the data Amazon has of you already. So if you have Amazon or Amazon Prime, Amazon already has this. You've lost the fight. They have your name, address, phone number, payment information, age, location, IP address, voice recordings, corporate financial information, and much, 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 much more. Those are the ones that are relevant for this conversation, but it's pages upon pages of stuff that Amazon has on you. All the information Amazon needs. And this is not a conspiracy tinfoil hat, Big Brother is watching you, blah, blah, blah. No. If you're an average citizen, you've already lost the data battle. It's just a matter of time. What this is me saying is, with all the data that they're able to gather from these streaming services, you see how that's different from a Nielsen rating where they can't even tell you how many people are watching a television at a given time. Instead of now saying, oh, well, a couple TVs in this area were watching this, they'll be able to say, all right, 1 million black men ages 18 to 34 that live in Georgia watch the Atlanta Falcons versus the New Orleans Saints on Prime Video. I'm not even sure if that's a game. That's just an example. That is invaluable information to the NFL because that's data they can give to their partners, whether it be advertisers or anything else. When they're trying to target ads and sell stuff, they know exactly where to go, especially now that they're going to start expanding and trying to get international. Of the 190 countries that Netflix has, they're going to look at that Christmas game and say, hey, in Uzbekistan or wherever, NFL did a real high number on Christmas. How about we have a game there next year? The play's right in front of you. And the NFL knows that we're all fucking junkies in the US. We're gonna watch football anyways. There's not much room for growth left in the United States for the NFL. Outside of the Taylor Swift influx of white teenage girls, but who knows how sustainable that is. Every other month, the far left or the far right starts a boycott the NFL movement, and none of it ever catches fire. Because the NFL knows we're Americans. We gonna watch us some football. And I've heard everything from it's gonna cost $800 a year to $1,600 a year if you count all the streaming services and whatnot to watch every single NFL game this upcoming season. Well, one, that's why piracy exists. And two, the people who can't figure out piracy are going to pay it. Or they're just not going to watch some of them games. But I bet you the ratings won't be affected. Because for all those other countries they're expanding to that don't have a CBS, don't have an NBC, don't have a Fox, that's going to be their only option to watch. So the number is still going to skyrocket. It's all the play. Lastly, how does this apply to the NBA? ESPN deal is already locked up according to every single report. There's gonna be more games on Disney Plus, gonna be more games on Hulu, so they can get into the streaming game that way as well. They've done the YouTube TV deal for the finals, I want to say for the past 5 years or so. But according to the Wall Street Journal, Jeff Bezos and Amazon are trying to creep into the bidding war, see if they can get them some streaming games. So it's quite possible the NBA is trying to get into the streaming race so they can get their hands on some of that data so they can start working it too. And the thing is with the NBA and their streaming and TV ratings, the TV ratings aren't as high, but their social media impressions are through the roof. So how much sense is it going to make in the long haul for them to stay on linear television when that's not where their audience is? And again, I'll say it again, for the inside the NBA people, you just love Charles Barkley and them. they will be fine. If I had to put my money on it and say, and guess, this is where the reckless speculation comes in. If I had to guess where inside the NBA is going to be next season, ESPN is the odds-on favorite. Ernie Johnson has been with TNT since the dinosaur era, so I doubt he leaves. So ESPN's gonna give them a new host for Inside the NBA. Y'all are not gonna like my answer as to who the host is, but the host answer is clear, and it's Malika Andrews. For whatever reason, NBA Twitter doesn't like Malika Andrews, but she's the clear answer for who the host of that show is going to be. She's the best host they have. So to recap, the NFL is coming after all your data. Hide your kids, hide your wife. I'm joking. Most of you already have these streaming platforms anyway, so who cares? NBA will talk more about once these streaming deals are actually done. And we're all going to watch our sports regardless. If not, find a piracy site that works for you. Cool? Cool. This has been the Kev BK Beloved Show. I've been Kev BK Beloved. Catch y'all next week.